All right, hello. Nine Settler here with my first and quite probably one of the very few YouTube only contents that I will ever make. This is gonna be a 0.27, no, not 0.27, sorry. It's gonna be 0.28 trunk and quite probably 0.28 stable God tier list. These gods are ordered in within their tiers and also ordered in tiers. I decided to just like have it like this so that if you want to see the tier list, just don't scroll till the end of the video. But if you care, if you truly care about what I have to say and my reasoning behind placing these in this order, well, that's what the video is for. And I also have a nice little selector here, so I can talk about the altar and just like drag it around so you know what I'm talking about just from like scrolling in the video. Ideally, I would also have some timestamps for people to quickly scroll through the video. By the way, I don't say it very often when I stream, but you should really speed up the video. Like, I don't think 1.0 speed is fast enough, and I am not going to go through the process of just like speeding this up in a video editor. So maybe speed up the video to 1.25 or whatever you feel like. Regardless, let's begin with the tier list, the God tier list for 0.28 trunk. First, at the very top of my list, I have Ashenzari. Ashenzari doesn't do anything directly. If in fact, if Ashenzari was weaker, Ashenzari would probably be in this tier, pretty much atheist. But Ashenzari is so ridiculously powerful that it's easily at the top of the list in 0.28. Um, the Ashenzari powers, like one pip of piety, you have everything identified. Later on, you have clarity, you have the scrying, you have the detecting of dangerous monsters, you have the magic mapping, you can even have portal bolts revealed. Um, it's really powerful, and also in addition to that you also have the skill enhancements. Like, the skill enhancements don't sound too great, but it's only until you experience them that you realize how crazy they are. And they're crazy. I really like cannot emphasize enough that you should try Ashenzari in 0.28 trunk if you haven't tried Ashenzari yet, because it really is the most powerful god in the game, and there's not much else to say about it. It Ashenzari will not really give you like a get out of jail button like some other gods in this list do, but also you won't need it because Ashenzari will make you that powerful that most fights will go in your favor. Ashenzari is well suited for spellcasters. Melee characters can also get a lot of out of Ashenzari, but those characters should probably consider heavy dicing to take advantage of Ashenzari's curses, because you're not gonna get only melee curses or like curses that would only be relevant to a melee character. You're probably gonna get a mixture of everything. So yeah. Next on our list, we have Okawaru, the second best god in my opinion. The 0.28 change to Okawaru to give it duel was pretty good in my opinion. I think I like it quite a bit. Duel comes with the relative downside slash conduct of not being able to have allies. You fight on your own, which I don't particularly mind. That might be well suited to my playstyle in Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup because I very rarely get allies for myself. Yes, I don't summon very frequently. I've been summoning a bit lately, but it's rather rare. I don't do it very frequently. And I also yeah, like when it comes to the experience evocables that place allies for you, I also don't use those a lot. Even on characters that are not restricted by Okawaru, like I don't feel like I need them too badly. Sure, every now and then it might be nice to Phantom Mirror a unique to make it die faster, but it is really not a necessity when engaging most of your uniques in this game. There's always other ways to deal with them, and Okawaru really delivers in that regard. Um, Okawaru will give you good weapons, amazing offensive abilities, And also Duel, as I mentioned, it's a new ability that Okawaru got in 0.28. Um, it can be considered a defensive ability because Duel will let you 1 versus 1 a monster. You can kill it because you should be able to beat a monster 1 versus 1, even at relatively low HP, let's say 50, 40%. Depending on what you target, you might be able to kill it, and then you just drink a couple of potions of ambrosia, and you're good to go. Also, Duel synergizes a lot with having regeneration, especially if you have multiple sources of regeneration. You might not even have to use potions of ambrosia to be in full fighting form by the time you get out of the Duel arena. So yeah, like there's not much else to say. I greatly enjoy Okawaru. I think Okawaru is really powerful, and I cannot recommend it anymore. That's why it's second on this list. Okay, so after Okawaru we have Gozag, right? Gozag, the god of money. You get a lot of money from playing with Gozag, just like going through the dungeon like that. Gozag does charge you for the god abilities that Gozag offers, but it's fine because you will probably not run out of money. And Gozag, in a certain way, offers you like so many more gifts and variety of gifts than any other god that gives you things does. Yeah, with Gozag you can use the shops to like fine tune your character's gear. You can also just save the money for maybe Bolts 5 or Sod 5 and do Bright Branch like 3 or 4 times in those places, between the two of those places. And that can turn to be a very easy Sod 5 or Bolts 5 for you, thanks to Gozag, which is a very powerful ability. It's not something that I do a lot because I usually am powerful enough to kill everything. And if I'm not powerful enough, I'm crafty enough to kill everything. So very rarely I will try to avoid fighting Sod 5 or Bolts 5. But Gozag really helps you in that regard if for some reason your character is not powerful enough to let you do that, or if you just don't feel like you want to do it, or you don't feel like you can do it, which is also a possibility. The gold distraction is pretty neat. It gets pretty crazy. In fact, it gets so crazy that in this version, Gozag was nerfed in that regard. Like the gold distraction was capped because it used to like pretty much perma paralyze everything in your line of sight, which was pretty crazy if you were doing like Mega 6 and things like that. So yeah, it was mostly a nerf to Mega 6 characters than nerf to Gozag per se. So yeah, anyway, not much else to say about Gozag. It's just like amazing, right? Um, Amazing and very straightforward. Now, the more we progress into the hard carry tier, we start to see gods that are like not as simple. Nemelex would be one of those. Nemelex is the first one of these that wants you to train invocations seriously. With Okawaru, you need invocations for Okawaru's abilities, but they're fine because you don't need like that much invocations. For Nemelex, you want 27 most likely, but Nemelex will give you firepower in return to let you kill things. Nemelex's powers are not bound by piety; they're bound by the amount of cards that you have in store, which is, in my opinion, pretty amazing because you like store a bunch of cards through your playthrough, and by the end of it, for example, in SOT 5, you just do deal 4 destruction and deal 4 summons, and you kill everything because those abilities are that powerful. Um, you also have escape decks, which are extremely powerful defensive abilities, panic buttons, very unlike anything else that any other god has. There's the Tomb card, there's the Elixir card, Tomb card surrounds you with walls. Elixir card gives you extremely powerful health and mana regeneration that scales with invocations. If you get a high power elixir card, it can heal you for a lot of HP, like a lot more than you would think a god ability that's free would be able to give you. Of course, that does have its downside because there's as good as cards as those are. There's also like um, smoke card, whatever it's called, clouds card, I think it's called. Yeah, that one pretty much doesn't do anything. It's not a scroll fog. You would think that it is, but it is definitely not. There's also degeneration card in the deck of destruction, not good. And in the deck of summonings, there's pentagram, which can give you pandemonium lords, but it can also give you enemy fiends that you have to fight against. Um, Very annoying. Um, but even with those relatively minor downsides, Nemerex is still like as a whole an extremely powerful god that I would recommend if you want to play an invocations based god. If you have never done that before, good species for Nemelex would be like Killork or Demon Spawn, maybe Formicid, because Formicid does benefit a lot from having escape options or like panic buttons that are not translocations based, and Nemelex helps you in that regard with the Tomb card, the Elixir card. So yeah. Next on our list, we have Hep. Um, you would underestimate the power of having a permanent ally as pretty much all that your god gives you. But let me tell you that Night Hep is very good on certain characters. The more we progress on our list and like our list as a whole, not only the tier, I will like specifically say this god is good for like this character or this type of characters. And Hep is good for relatively fragile characters that need something to be in front of them. Um, you can take care of your ancestor, your permanent ally that Hep offers you. You can heal it with a Hep ability. You can even switch places with it if you need to escape a dangerous situation or to protect it, to make it not die. You can also just not go Knight. I personally like Knight, but you can definitely go Battle Mage or Hexer, and those are also good. But I have most experience with the Knight. Um, so yeah, I think Hep will. All of these gods in the hard carry amazing category will win you the game, as long as you don't accidentally kill yourself in the process. Yeah, as long as you don't make too many mistakes, these gods will win you the game. Mm, so Hep is really good because of that. The permanent ally really is fantastic. It tanks for you a lot. It supports squishy characters very well. If I had to play a cat again, I would probably try Hep. And yeah, I would definitely try Hep with a Spriggan, with a Tengu, with a Deep Elf. Maybe not with a Gargoyle, but yeah. I guess you could theoretically use Hep on any character. You don't need to go hard on invocations for Hep to be really powerful, but you do need like I would say maybe around 15 invocations, so your idealize is not like absolute trash. Um, but yeah. Next on our list we have Uskoyo, and Uskoyo is another hard carry invocations god. You want 27 invocations with Uskoyo, and it may not be evident at first glance, but Uskoyo's paralysis power that you get when you hit 3 pips of piety while fighting with Uskoyo is a power that scales with invocations. I have had 7 turns of paralysis on everything on the screen with 27 invocations. It's incredible for stabbers. It's incredible as a whole. It's just like really, really strong. You also have Grand Finale, and the more invocations you train, the faster you'll be able to use Grand Finale. You with 0, you might have to wait for quite a while or get stuck in a very long fight in order to be able to use Grand Finale. With 27 invocations, you might even be able to do it twice in the same fight against like a normal monster band. If that is, of course, if you just don't kill them fast. or before you you get to that point where you would have to use Grand Finale for a second time. But you will almost always get to a first Grand Finale in every fight against a band of monsters. And Grand Finale, you may not know, but it is an ability that one-shots a monster. It doesn't check willpower, it doesn't check anything. The only downside it has is that you have to be in a very long fight for you to be able to use it because of the way Euskayo Piety works. But if you get into that situation, you can Grand Finale, and you can Grand Finale easier the more invocations you have. So yeah, I think Euskayo is extremely powerful. Euskayo doesn't really offer that much in the way of defensive abilities, but it does offer like very overwhelming offense. I am very much a fan of Euskayo, and I would recommend you all to give it a try. Um, Considering how it's a god that wants you to have 27 invocations by some point in the game, maybe go a species with a good invocations aptitude. Alternatively, I guess you could go something like Kobold or Spriggan, so you get at like proper stabs because Uskayo's paralysis is guaranteed, and because it is guaranteed, it will mean that you don't have to rely on stealth or like RNG or hexes, monsters waking up right as you're about to stab them. No, Uskayo removes that from the equation, and I appreciate that a lot. Um, so yeah, next on our list we have the Shining One. So the Shining One is a god that I personally like a lot, even for 3-rune games. People, I feel like they undervalue the angels. I feel like they also undervalue the Halo. The Cleansing Flame is incredible against demons. It's not that amazing against normal monsters, but it is usable against normal monsters, and it does scale with invocations. But I wouldn't worry too much about getting it for if you're only gonna go for a 3-rune game. Um, yeah, the Halo lets you see invisible, or rather, it reveals invisible monsters. In addition to that, the Shining One will extend the duration of your summons. It's not only the angels that the Shining One offers, it will be the duration of all summons if they kill demons or the undead. So the Shining One is a pretty good god for a summoner because of the Halo letting the monsters that you're summoning see invisible, and therefore making them be able to take care of some pesky early game undead monsters like vampires. Sorry, not undead, but like invisible monsters like vampires. Depending some uniques even unseen horrors. Yeah, there's a fair amount of monsters. Even the random ass monster that just like happened to find a potion of invisibility on the floor, decided to be a jerk and used it against you instead of just like sitting still and letting itself cease to exist so you could grab the potion for yourself. You can definitely use the Shining One's Halo to counteract those kinds of monsters. Um, I don't have much else to say. The Shining One is pretty good for a 3-rune game, but it really becomes something close to like the best god in the game for extended. Yes, I would put the Shining One maybe here for extended, maybe even here, like in front of Ashenzari for extended, because not only do you get all the nice things that you already have that are like perfectly viable for you to be able to win the game in a 3-rune game, you also get crazy heals and crazy mana every time you kill an undead monster or a demon monster, and extended is comprised entirely of that. So you get a lot of sustain, you get a lot of damage, you also get to Holy Brand a weapon. Ideally, you would use it with a launcher. Try a longbow or an arbalest of Holy Wrath if you have never done it. It's really good if you're going into extended. Um, so yeah, the Shining One is amazing. That's why I have it in the amazing tier, but it's the final one in the amazing tier. There's nothing else. And before I proceed into the next tier, I need to make a special mention of Ignis. Ignis is not in this list because this list was for 0.27. You can see that some gods have an outdated altar, but I'm not talking about like the old versions of those gods. It's like the new versions. It's just that I didn't want to make a whole new tier list with the whole new altars and in Ignis. Ignis is also not like a real god if you really think about it. The way gods work in Dungeon Crawl Stone Sweep is like something that you commit to for the entirety of the game, and Ignis is not that. Ignis is kind of like like a glorified, very powerful consumable, amazing consumable that will definitely get you out of the early game, but will eventually just like run dry. Of course, you will run out of your amazing consumable, and then you will abandon it for a god. Um, so if you get Ignis from an early game Fated Altar, it is easily above Ashenzari. But then it will like obviously lose usefulness, and it will be like it will never be worse than Atheist. It will probably be in like Gimmick Run or pretty much Atheist, because you do get fire resistance, which might be nice, but a god is better than fire resistance, so pretty much Atheist. Um, but anyway, if you get it from Faded Altar, don't be disappointed. Just like enjoy the ride, enjoy the free early game with Ignis. Use Ignis powers very liberally, and then make your switch to a different god once you're powerful enough to survive the wrath. Um, when that concludes my hard carry section. Next on the list we have hard carry, less amazing, and we have Behumet as the first one. Before I took the screenshot, I had Behumet as hard carry amazing, because Behumet is a very powerful god, but Behumet doesn't have the same amount of craze that these do. Behumet is kinda like Ashenzari, if Ashenzari only enhanced your magic but gave you spells. So it is really good, but it's not something that you can go with every character. And these you can kind of pick with whatever character you want, and it will be good. Except maybe for Okawaru. Okawaru really wants you to be a weapon user. If you're not a weapon user, you don't really get a lot from going Okawaru. Um, and Behumet really wants you to be a mage user. If you are not a mage, you or a magic user, you're not a mage, you won't really get a lot of juice out of Behumet. But the juice that you get when you're a mage is like pretty crazy, let me tell you. Um, Behumet's Behumet's gifts are really, really good. They come really early into the game. They add variety to your starting book. And then as the game progresses and as you become more powerful, Behumet will give you spells that. Sorry for that. Sorry. Behemoth will give you spells that scale accordingly. So by the mid game, you're gonna get like a couple of level 5, level 6 spells, and later on, you're gonna get level 7, level 8, and you're guaranteed 3 extremely high level spells by the end of Behemoth's gift list. So Behemoth will make you powerful enough to use those. Behemoth will help you cast them. Behemoth will extend the range. Behemoth will make it so that when you kill things, you get mana back. Um, Behemoth is just like all that a mage wants. All that a mage wants, really. Yes, I would greatly recommend you to try Behemoth if you have played mages and you have played like Sif Muna with your mages. Yeah, don't do that. Sif Muna is in this tier for a reason, but I'll talk about that later. Behemoth is amazing. Next on our list we have Ru, and personally, I don't like Ru. I would not go Ru on any one of my characters, but Ru is powerful. Ru has the power output to make any character into a winner character. The reason why I didn't put Ru here is because Ru offers you sacrifices that you must take in order to gain more Ru piety. So it's like permanently giving you pretty messed up bad mutations, right? That's literally what Ru does. It offers you 3 bad mutations, and you can take one of them, and you will gain some piety. Depending on how messed up the mutation is, you will get more piety. So if you get really, really brutal and messed up mutations, you can go to like 6 pips of piety with Rook with like 4 mutations. But if you get like the minor sacrifices and try to like impact your experience in a negative way, as little as possible, it will take you a while to get to 6 pips of piety. Mm, Yes, I am not a fan of Ru because of that, because I feel like it alters the base gameplay in a negative way too much, and I'm not too much of a fan of that. I would consider Ru to be a challenge god, to be completely honest. On the other hand, the abilities that you do get from Ru are amazing. Power Leap is like controlled blink, pretty much. Um, Draw out power is pretty hefty heal. It's definitely what a deep dwarf wants in these days of Nerf McClef. Um, Nerf McClef. I'll talk about it in like the next god. Um, and Apocalypse is the equivalent of a level 9 spell. I would even go as far as to say that Apocalypse is the single most powerful god ability in the entirety of the game. Like, it doesn't get any more powerful than literally killing or permanently well, not really permanently, but like severely paralyze all the monsters that you're seeing. And the best part about Ru, I think, is the fact that it doesn't use invocations. So you can just like make your sacrifices and keep gaining experience, and the abilities will just get more powerful. They scale with your experience level and with your piety. So the more piety and the more experience level that you have, the more powerful Apocalypse will be. And yeah, it's like really crazy Apocalypse. You can use it, and more often than not, it will recover all the drain that it causes you on a single cast. Well, I guess you should also not just like spam it against every monster in the game. You should use it when you have to use it. But if you do, it's gonna like be extremely good. Um, Next on our list, we have Maclef. Maclef used to be in the top tier, but in recent versions, Maclef was very seriously nerfed. People label it as a rebalance. I personally think it was a massive nerf to Maclef. The heal that Maclef gives you is halved, straight off halved. You get half of the HP that you got before with Maclef. Um, the invocations abilities that Maclev offers were buffed to compensate. So to make Maclev into a god that he actually uses invocations, instead of just the god of kill things to get healed a lot, which unfortunately was much better than the version of Maclev that we have right now. I feel like it is right now is like a mixture of um, I don't know. It's like hard to tell, but a god that gives you HP and something like Nemelex with the deck of destruction that gives you like the ability to kill things. I don't know. I personally don't like Maclev as it is. I played one game with Maclev after the nerf with a Deep Dwarf, and I was not too thrilled. So I think Maclev and Deep Dwarf are both extremely unviable as it is nowadays. But I think that's a spoilers for a future video. Mm, yeah, major demons can help you for sure. Greater destruction can also be pretty nice. I think the chances of you blowing yourself up with greater destruction were like just a straight up remove, so now it can't happen anymore, and that's pretty neat. But I still don't like new Maclef, let me tell you. Next on our list we have Trog, and Trog is also a god that was recently hit by a serious nerf. Um, Now Berserk costs piety. It costs a teeny tiny bit of piety to Berserk from Trog every time you want to Berserk. It is a very crippling nerf to some species like cat that rely on the extra HP from Berserk to not die in two hits from anything. Also, it kind of makes you able to kill things in two hits because, well, that's what Berserk does. Um, this is not even the first nerf to Trog in recent versions. Trog no longer gives you ammunition, no longer gives you ranged weapons, will not give you weapons that are not either highly enchanted, vorpal, flaming, or anti-magic. That's all Trog gives you now when it comes to weapons. You do get the Brothers in Arms, you do get Trog's Hand. So Trog is not like terrible. Definitely not worse than Atheist. Definitely not an atheist god, but it's still not nearly as good as it used to be. I am currently playing a Trog character. Funnily enough, I cannot berserk because it's a 4 Berserker, but But yeah, I haven't really been feeling Trog. Um, it's just really not to my liking personally, I have to say. I like playing mages a lot more than I like playing melee characters, and Trog is obviously like you cannot cast with Trog. So yeah, that's why I put Trog here and not here. But Trog is still relatively good, even with all those nerfs, because Trog still does nice things for you. I just think that Okawaru does the same things. Well, it's not even the same things, it's similar things, but Okawaru does them way better. And also, Okawaru doesn't forbid you from casting spells. So, in that regard, like Okawaru definitely is a winner, and Trog definitely is not a winner. But that's about it. That's about all that I have to say for Trog. Next on our list, we have Wujian. I would place Wujian more highly, except for the fact that Wujian is kind of complicated to play. Um, it might not be evident at first glance, but Wujian, you should not use Wujian martial arts every time. Like, for example, you should not use Whirlwind if you're only fighting against one monster, unless you need to reposition for some reason. You should not wall jump every time you have to wall jump, or every time you have the option to wall jump, you should not wall jump. You should really think about what you're doing and when you're doing it and how you're doing it, because if you don't, Wujian will like make you fumble, and it's not quite a mechanic in the game, but you will most likely like make serious mistakes with Wujian martial arts, and they might kill you as a result. Kind of like with real life martial arts. If you're not properly trained to perform them in real life, maybe don't try because you can break a hand or something. But anyway, what I'm talking about here is that Wujian wall jump takes 2 turns, so it pretty much is like borrowing a turn. So you deal 2 turns worth of damage, and then you're paralyzed for 2 turns, pretty much. And the monsters get to attack you twice if they lift the wall jump. You can mitigate that with Serpent Slash, which is by far the best ability that Wujian has to offer. Gives you 2 free movement options. If you do martial arts with those movement options, they cannot miss and they deal increased damage. Um, it's extremely good, like really, really powerful. It's like almost control blink levels of powerful. It's also very cheap, so you can do it. Maybe not every fight, because if you do it every fight, the piety cost will pile up, and you will see that you're dropping to like 5 or maybe even 4 pips of piety if you do it every fight. But you should definitely not hesitate to use it once or maybe even twice against dangerous foes or like large agglomerations of enemies. I don't mean like a single ogre band in. Well, I don't think ogre bands exist anymore in bolts, but like let's say not a single bolt guard band in bolts. Let's say against balls 5, you should definitely not hesitate to use all that you have, including multiple serpent slashes. They have a cooldown, but the fights will usually go for long enough that you will be able to do it twice. Um, and that's not even talking about Gujian's most powerful ability. I said that Serpent Slash is the best, but it is not nearly as powerful offensive wise as Heavenly Storm. Heavenly Storm will give you crazy amounts of slaying, will give you a cloud so that only the monsters that are within your attack range will be able to see you. And it will also give you a bunch of slaying and a bunch of evasion just from like jumping around and doing flips, doing martial arts, lunging into monsters, and doing the whirlwind attack and all that jazz. So all of that synergizes very well together. You do need to have some form of fast attacks. You should definitely not try to do a Wujian character with something like the Dark Maul because it's not gonna go well for you. But if you have just a usual minimum delay weapon. It's just gonna be good. But it gets even better if you have something along the lines of a quick blade or maybe even an armed combat at a very high skill level, because that gets pretty fast. Mm, so yeah, I would recommend Wujian on many characters. I don't think it requires you to train invocations. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. I might be wrong though, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't require you to train invocations. And that's a pretty good thing in my opinion. It's like less skill gone to invocations, more skill gone into actually making you fit for fighting, which I like a lot flavor-wise as well. You like practice, and then if your practice is not enough, you ask for a little help from Jian, and Jian solves the fight for you. Yeah. Next on our list, we have Fedhas. I have very little experience with Fedhas, believe it or not. It's like really not my flavor of God. I don't like using allies very much in Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup, and Fedhas is like all allies. The Ballista Misetas you could even consider you could consider them more like grenades than allies, but they can hurt you, and I don't like that. The Oklovs can be nice turrets, but allies again, I don't know. I don't like that your god abilities are like relying on something that may not do anything. That's why I also don't like using summonings too much. So I have very little to say about Fedhas, but I can recognize the power. After all, I have won at least two games with every one of the gods in this list. At least two. With most of them, I have won more than three characters. After all, I have a lot of experience with Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup. I wouldn't say that I am not even like fantastic. I would say that I'm rather decent and a rather consistent player of Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup, but I'm not the best by any means, and will most likely never be. Um, but I do have experience, and I would think that I know what I'm talking about. Mm, but at least when it comes to Fedhas, I don't know that much what I'm talking about because Fedhas is one of the few areas of the game where I don't have a lot of expertise because I just don't enjoy what the god has to offer, and therefore, like, I don't go the god like very frequently. It's maybe I should play a Fedhas character after my current one. Oh well. Anyway, next on our list we have Yredelemnul, but it's new Yredelemnul. It's not the old one from 0.27 and before. I'm talking about the Yred from 0.28 and beyond. If it was old Yredelemnul, it would be here. It would be in like the top tier, alongside Maklev and Trog as well. But 0.28 nerfed a bunch of gods, I think, or it definitely feels like that to me. Um, Yredelemnul now has a very wonky and unusual piety system where, in order to gain piety with Yred, you need to kill monsters, and the monsters need to be zombified. Yred does that for you automatically. You don't have to worry about anything when it comes to that. And you can trade zombies for Yred abilities. That is abysmal in the early game, I have to tell you. I went through a Jared character in the early game, and it was so bad. Like, in the early game, it felt really, really bad. Um, it felt almost worse than Atheist. It was not worse than Atheist, but it felt almost worse than Atheist because it was like not having a god. And the illusion of having a god is what I would say that made me think that it was worse than Atheist. But I have to say that the more the game progressed and the more powerful my character got once I got out of the early game, Jets really started to be more noticeable and prominent. Having a permanent ally like Saint Roca or Frederick or Luis or even a Catoblepas is like a very nice thing. Um, Also, the bounce souls were buffed. Some of them are bugged, or at least in my experience, like Saint Roca the Orc was bugged. It was dealing like no damage in melee, but it was relatively tanky, so that was not terrible. Um, you can also like steal the soul of demonologist or a sorcerer, deep of demonologist, deep of sorcerer, maybe even like a high level draconian, or if you find Tiamat right before winning the game, you can steal the soul of Tiamat, and then you have like a godly ally that hits like a Trog. So yeah, I would say that Yredelemnul is barely on the less amazing tier because Jred is really not that powerful as it is now. It will not do a lot to get you out of the early game. Especially because it's an invocations heavy god. Before you didn't really care too much because you got your bone dragons just from worshipping Jred, just like god cubes. Now you need, if you want the bone dragons, you need 27 invocations, and there's like nothing that you can do about it. And they will be temporary; they will not even be permanent, and you cannot get them immediately upon entering the floor. So I would say that Dread, like the current iteration of Dread, still good, a vast nerf. Um, it was probably well deserved because it used to be a very boring and very powerful god. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't like how it is. It's still powerful, but I don't. It is a shade compared to what it used to be. It is like nothing but a shadow of what it used to be, is what I meant. Anyway, that's why it's barely here. Because it can still win you the game. It's still a hard carry god, but it is definitely less amazing. So Gimmick Run, the reason why I put Lugonu here in the gimmick run category is because you pretty much don't see Lugonu outside of being an Abyssal Knight. So you have to start an Abyssal Knight to go Lugonu or do some extremely questionable decisions and abandon your god when you get banished and go Lugonu. And then, sure, you get out of the Abyss. But at what cost? You're gonna have Gothrath, and Gothrath is very likely to kill you. So I don't like that very much. Um, and yeah, it's like really difficult for a normal character that's not an Abyssal Knight to go Lugonu. You can get Lugonu from a Fated Altar. You can get Lugonu from the extremely rare Corrupted Temple. You can also get Lugonu from a bolt in the dungeon that places Lugonu. It's like all of those are like super rare ways to get Lugonu outside of starting an Abyssal Knight. So Lugonu is like you have to start a game with Lugonu in order to be a Lugonu worshipper, pretty much, or get like super lucky, or start Scum until you get Lugonu from a Fated Altar. It's not a lot of options that you have, and pretty much not a lot of funny options of emergent gameplay that you have, um, unless you happen to get lucky with with the altar generating somewhere in the early game before you have picked a god. So yeah, that's why it's in Gimmick Run. If it was a normal god, I think it would be solidly in this tier because Lugonu can definitely help you win the game. Lugonu offers a very nice set of defensive abilities between being able to blink yourself away, being able to enter the abyss at will in a dire situation, being able to exit the abyss at will for almost free, being able to corrupt the area around you. That's very powerful for cheesing gauntlets. Even maybe cheesing Hellord bolts or Panlord bolts if you for some reason are using Lugonu that late into the game. Or the last thing that you can do with Lugonu is banish monsters. So banishing requires high invocations, but it will kill the monster. Well, it doesn't quite kill the monster, it sends the monster to the abyss, and if you ever go into the abyss, you're likely to stumble into the monster if the monster was high level enough. I know that I have gone into the abyss, and I have been immediately greeted by like 4 Hell Sentinels and 5 Orbs of Fire, and I've barely survived that kind of thing. Yeah, those monsters are definitely not monsters that you want to fight when they are supporting each other. If those monsters, that quality of monster alone is like already an issue, when they're together, you don't want to mess with them. So, funnily enough, if you're with Lugano and you're banishing everything and you're using a distortion weapon, you should probably try to not go into the abyss. Because if you go into the abyss, you might die. You might be forced into a ridiculous fight of your own doing. Um, but anyway, I think Lugonu is powerful. I already said that if it was a normal god, it would be somewhere around here. Um, if you have never gone Abyssal Knight, I would recommend Formicid for it. Formicid benefits a lot from having a god that gives it good panic buttons. For me, it definitely likes Lugonu, likes Wujian, likes Nemelex, maybe even likes Gozag um, because of the gold distraction. It might be good for your character. Mm, so yeah, next on the list we have Beogh. Beogh is also a gimmick run god because you can only go Beogh with a heal orc, and you're kinda bound to the heal orc micromanagement, like almost RTS, like I've heard it described aspects. I hope that with the rework of Dredd, Beogh just like remains the way it is. I don't think it's too bad, the current state of Beogh. I don't think it needs a rework. I don't think it needs to be changed in any way whatsoever. Um, but if something interesting comes up that like refreshes the experience of going Beogh, I would not be opposed to giving it a try. I almost always give things a try. Well, or rather, I should say I always give things a try before like exerting my judgment upon them and like forming an opinion. Because if you don't try things, how are you going to form an opinion on them? Um, Current state of Beogh, very fun. Having so many orcs is very funny. Yes, you can definitely level them up into knights, maybe even warlords. You can give them gold scales. You can give them arbalest, triple crossbows. You can give them pole arms. And you can have them all fight from behind you while you soak up all those nasty elemental damage attacks, and they deal the juicy damage to support you while you are supporting them. Unfortunately, that all kind of goes out of the window in SOT because in SOT everyone has high damage elemental attacks that hit in a very large area. Fireballs and clouds of poison and bolts of fire and crystal spears and acid all flowing or floating around in the screen, and don't even start with the clown pies, turning your orcs into something that's not an orc, but for some reason it's still your ally, um, or leeches paralyzing, petrifying things. Or stumbling into Tiamat, being a no, being an Nork of Beogh and having to leave behind all your dudes in order to make a run away from the Tiamat fight because Tiamat immediately got berserked by a ghost moth, or sorry, by a moth of rat. That has happened to me in the past. Um, so yeah, it's just what happens when you go Beogh. And you have to like get used to it. It is a gimmicky god, but it is definitely not a bad god. If it was a normal god and it just like functioned the same way as other gods, maybe I would put it somewhere either here or here. It's definitely not here. Because Beogh is still like a rare decent god. The smites are also amazing. It's very well worth it to get 27 invocations with Beogh because smiting monsters is a lot of guaranteed damage. It's not reduced by armor class evasion, it cannot be blocked, it's just damage. I have killed Orbs of Fire with 2 or 3 smites. It's pretty crazy, 3 or 4 maybe. Um, you also don't have to kill them only with smite. You can always finish them off with a crossbow or just like giving them a good old whack with your melee weapon, probably an axe. But if you get into a tricky situation with a powerful spellcaster from the other side of the screen, you can always mash the smite button and kill them like that. And that's a pretty good ability, very valuable in my opinion. Next on our list, we have Dith Menos in the pretty much atheist tier. Dith Menos does have defensive options, but the defensive options that Dith Menos offers, which are pretty much shadow form, they strongly pale in comparison to the defensive options that most of these other gods that we have already reviewed face, or offer you rather. Power Leap, draw out power, summon allies, take 2 movement actions for free, paralyze everything, summon angels, have a permanent ally to hide behind, Tomb card, Elixir card, um, gold aura to distract enemies, and you can also potion petition for heal wounds and curing. It's really good. Duel is a defensive option for sure. Ashenzari doesn't offer anything defensive wise. Ashenzari is pretty much atheist, but if pretty much atheist gods were good, yeah, pretty much. That's a way that I can describe atheist. So yeah, very clearly this Menos is very outclassed in that regard. You get the Umbra, which increases your evasion in a very weird way that no one really knows how it works. Um, and I think it also increases your stealth. But it might be a matter of this Menos' gameplay not really resonating with me that much, but it definitely doesn't hold its own as much as the other gods that I have already reviewed. In fact, these two tiers, oh no, Control Z. Okay, these two tiers that we have here are definitely like significantly, extremely noticeably weaker than the gods that we have already reviewed before. So don't be surprised if I don't talk to about these gods with like so much admiration and joy as I was talking about some of the gods above, like Jian or the Shining One or Nemelex or Okawaru or Ashenzari. Yeah, this Menos offers you that, offers you Shadow Step to step next to a monster, offers you the shadow projectiles. But the thing is that the things that it Menos offer you are not the greatest things. Like they really don't feel like they impact the game as much as the gods above have abilities that do impact the game in a very positive manner for you. So it is not so terrible to go Dithmenos, especially now that Dithmenos doesn't ban fire. That was like a really dumb thing about Dithmenos design. Kind of flavorful, but also weird. Why does that particular god hate fire? But anyway, now that it doesn't do that, I don't have any reason to call it worse than Atheist, but it also doesn't like shine enough to say that it's like a hard carry god. It is very solidly in the pretty much Atheist tier. Next on our list we have Elibilon. Oh, Elibilon is come on. Okay, Elibilon, the god of healing. You can definitely instantly kill, aka neutralize some monsters by healing them, and they have a pretty good chance of going neutral against you. That scales with invocations. So with a lot of invocations, you should theoretically be running around healing everyone. I don't know if that still gives halved experience cost, but it does cost you piety, regardless of whether the pacification effect succeeds or not. Mm, Elibelon will also let you heal yourself with the ability, but it's so weak. It is significantly weaker than Rudro Outpower, than the Shining One heal on kills. It is very much weaker than asking for potions from Gozag and getting heal wounds and curing in the same potion petition. It is so much weaker than the Elixir card. So for a healer god, Elibelon is in a pretty rough spot, I think. Um, so that's why I think it's pretty much atheist. It does have some downsides. It doesn't let you use demon weapons, doesn't let you use condenser bane without running into the risk of just like losing your religion because you get clouds of negative energy, and Elividon really doesn't like that. Um, but it's not terrible, you know? It's not the terrible version of the good god. You kinda do get something from going Elibilon, and the downsides of going Elibilon are not like the worst thing in the world. That's why I call it pretty much atheist. But I do wish it was better, and I would never even consider these gods. Yes, I would not consider them unless I'm trying to do like some form of challenge run. Um, I have not much else to say about Elibilon. It's just not in a good spot right now, I think. Next on our list, we have Kiku. Kiku is the god of necromancers, and it pales so hard in comparison to Behumet as a mage god. Yes, as a mage god, these two pale so much in comparison to Behemoth. Kiku is a god that will give you corpses, give you torment resistance, will give you a Necronomicon or a weapon of pain. Um, but the big issue with Kiku is the fact that necromancy is not like the greatest thing in the world. Um, and the effect that Kiku has on your character is very minimal compared to the effects of other gods that we have already reviewed. Kiku will give you three books, pretty much. I think it's 3 books, or maybe it's 2 books and the Necronomicon. I don't really remember because I don't play Kiku too often. Um, Kiku will also give you corpses, so you can theoretically cast animate them with the corpses, and animate death and get a bunch of zombies. So theoretically you can do that and kill things if you need a bunch of allies to help you. Still doesn't feel that good to me, especially because you're relying on a god to give you like allies to solve a single fight instead of just giving you the power to not have to rely on that kind of thing in the first place. And you may be thinking, well, how is that different from some of the other gods that you have revealed before, like Nemelex or Trog, for example? Well, Nemelex gives you variety, a lot of variety, a lot of versatility. You get a lot of offensive power, a lot of defensive power. You get summons too. You don't have to rely on your summons. You just have so much to do with Nemelex that like a god like Kiku or the gods in this tier feel extremely pale and like anemic in comparison to Nemelex. Let's just put it like that. Um, so what else does Kiku offer? I think that's it. Oh, you can also invoke Torment by sacrificing a corpse. I think, or at least the last time I tried, that Torment also hurt you. So I don't think I've ever used it. Yeah, I don't like Kiku too much. I prefer going a goth that's more than pretty much atheist after a certain point in the game. Sorry for that. I do this in one take. Like I don't want to edit them. You can definitely scroll forward in the video if you don't want to listen to everything. Um, Next on our list we have Sif Muna. Sif Muna is not good. Let me tell you straight up. Sif Muna is very lame yet again in comparison to Behumet. Behumet makes it so that you can cast more easily, doesn't require you to train invocations, doesn't well, it's more like Behumet does something. Sif Muna feels like it doesn't do anything. Sure, you get mana. You get an ability that lets you channel mana. You have the ability to forget spells on demand without having to use a scroll of amnesia. And you get divine exegesis, so you can cast whatever. And those abilities are trash compared to getting spells in the way that Behemoth offers spells. So if Muna starts giving you spells at around 5 pips of piety, getting to 5 pips of piety as Sif Muna takes a while. Takes way too long for it to be a reliable thing to have like variety of spells in the early game. Behemoth offers you the consistency of having different flavors of damage to be able to survive the early game. Say that you're a Venom Mage and you encounter skeletons. You are kind of boned if you don't have anything other than Venom magic, poison magic. You're kind of boned if you're with Ziv Muna. With Behumed, you will most likely, by the time you start seeing the like messed up D5, D6 skeletons, if you found Behumed early on, you might already have your first spell from Behumed. It might be Foxfire, um, and it will most likely help you deal with those skellies. And then as the game progresses, you will have better and better ways to deal with the monsters that are immune to poison. You might even get Ignite Poison from Behumed, and then you're good to go. Behumet also, like, sorry for talking about Behumet a lot, but it's just like Behumet is way better than Sif Muna. Theoretically, with Sif Muna, you have the advantage of consistency of having access to all of the spells in the game if you go for long enough worshipping Sif Muna. I don't think it's worth it. I definitely think that you don't need all the spells to win the game. You don't even need to like getting the same spells every time. I don't know. I would rather just like roll with what Behumet gives me, and precisely because of that, it's why Jian happens to be pretty fun. Almost always. Sometimes it can be a pretty rough experience, but it is also very nice that it's randomized. Um, so we have talked about a channel. We have talked. I talked about channel. Channel. Sifmuna gives you mana, costs or requires invocations skill. Behemoth gives you mana on kills, so it doesn't require invocations, and it doesn't require you to waste a turn using the ability. Um, Sifmuna Amnesia. Sifmon Amnesia is pretty worthless in my opinion. You usually have plenty of scrolls of amnesia to just forget the things that you no longer need or want. So like you don't use them all, and therefore like the ability is pretty whatever. And Divine Exogenesis is probably Sifmuna's strongest ability, and funnily enough, something that that would make me consider Sifmuna a melee character. Yeah, imagine just having a melee character that can tornado or like polar vortex or do something funny like that. But it is definitely not an ability that a mage wants. A mage doesn't care about casting any spell. A mage cares about getting powerful enough to cast that spell without having to rely on an extremely expensive ability that comes late enough into worshipping your god that otherwise didn't really help you kill things, unless you got lucky with the floor god. Yes, it's all of that in conjunction that makes me very seriously dislike and never consider Sifmuna for a spellcaster, and it's engineered to be a spellcaster god. So yeah, I'll give it a try as a melee character. Maybe Sifmuna is secretly like a Binestalker character, and you go Binestalker and you use the channel to regain some mana to heal, pseudo heal, because Binestalker has permanent Guardian Spirit, so they take damage to their mana as well as their HP, and you just like tap, and then Divine Exogenesis for Death's Door or something along those lines. Maybe that's funny. I shall give it a try in the future. Maybe I will upload that to YouTube. Next on our list, in the final tier, finally, Worse Than Atheist. These are gods that have severe downsides, not minor downsides, like actually pretty messed up downsides that will most likely make you not have a good time with the god or like make it be a severe challenge for you. And the first one in our list is Chei. Chei is reminiscent of Ashenzari. With Chei, you don't get the skill levels, but you get stats. That happens to be pretty good. 15 in every stat is exquisite, I have to say. Very, very good indeed. There is a hefty downside, and that is that from the moment you worship Chevriados, you will not be able to run away from the rest of the game. Uh, if you have to run away, you have to blink either the spell or the scroll. You have to teleport. You have to rely on other escape options. Chevriados does come with some decent escape options in the form of Step from Time and the other one that's a Step from Time but much shorter. I don't really remember what it's called. So you kinda have something that you can do to not die if you make a mistake with Chibreados, but Chibreados greatly punishes mistakes. And it also nerfs regeneration items because normally with regeneration items you can easily just like walk away a couple of tiles and be back in fighting shape. Hopefully you also lost some monsters in the meantime, so the fight becomes much easier. Chibreados doesn't let you do that. Um, the power from Chevriados' stats is really good. Slouch is decent, um, but I don't like Chevriados. I definitely think that Chevriados is worse than Atheist because of that, and I would definitely 100% consider Chevriados to be a challenge god. All of these I consider to be something that you pick to make your game harder in one way or another. Um, But yeah, maybe interesting for experienced players. As I have mentioned in the past, I have won with all of these gods at least twice. And the ones that I like the least are Fedhas, Kiku, Sifmuna, and Zin. I like even Chei a bit more than I like those four. So yeah. Next on our list we have Jiyva, and we have this dancing Jiyva altar. It's amazing. Jiyva was reworked in 0.28, and I have yet to try the rework. But in my opinion, the worst factor of going Jiyva still remains, and that is the fact that Jiyva jellies will eat items off the floor. Sure, the dungeon has a bunch of trash that you're not gonna use, a bunch of armors, a bunch of low-level weapons, but it also has the scrolls of blinking. It also has auxiliary weapons or armor rather that you have not found and that you may want to wear. It has branded armor. It has branded shields. It has many things. When you go Jiyva, you are sacrificing the vast majority of those things that the floor god gives you um, to have Jiyva. And Jiyva is good. Let me tell you that the current version of Jiyva, I've read it, I've heard from people that have tried it. I unfortunately haven't had a character that wants to go Jiyva, but I want to try it because obviously, like it is silly to exert an opinion on something if you don't know, if you have never tried it. Um, so I cannot say too much about Jiyva. I still think that the fact that you lose the floor god or the reliability of the floor god, it's very weird, but the floor god is somewhat reliable. Like I think that's bad compared to what Jiyva offers you. If you have not looked at new Jiyva, I recommend you to go to GitHub and read the patch notes for new Jiyva, so you can form an opinion on that yourself. Um, so yeah, since I have not played it, I don't have much else to say about New Jiva. I think I can leave the dancing altar for now. Let's go to Sin. Sin is, in my opinion, also worse than Atheist because Sin doesn't offer you with any offensive abilities. Everything that Sin does is extremely defensive. Recite is trash. Let me tell you, I have won a character with 27 invocation. I have recited against mummies, and it's trash. It it doesn't make sense to me. It is a free ability, but it is insultingly bad. Also, that same character got excommunicated from Sin because I used a condenser bane because the character was so weak. Um, with any other goth, I wouldn't have any issues whatsoever if I had used that condenser bane. Um, I think any one item that Sin bans is more powerful offense wise than Sin. And like you have an excess of defense with Sin um, that you don't need. You need offense in order to win this game. You cannot defense your way into a 3-run win because you're gonna be severely lacking in experience and items, quite probably. I don't like what Sin offers. I don't like any of Sin's abilities. I don't like Imprison. I don't like Recite. I don't like Sanctuary. And Vitalize is good, but it is prohibitively expensive in the invocations department for what it does. Um, so yes, I just wouldn't consider seeing on any of my characters. If I needed a good god, I would go with the Shining One on every of my characters. It is a shame that the Shining One is still a good god that holds up um, in comparison to Elivilon and Sin that like greatly pale in comparison. Um, Next on our list we have some. Before, I used to classify some as like a gimmick run because I thought that some was still like relatively viable. The changes to the early game in recent versions of the game and like the reduction of player experience has all like come together and made some into a much harder, much more unpleasant experience. Let me tell you. So some is now finally, after so many years, a proper challenge run, where it's RNG. It's straight up RNG getting out of the early levels. And if you get out of the early levels, some now has shadow creatures. So okay, you survive the early levels. Let me throw some level appropriate monsters while you're trying to rest after a fight. It's like permanently suffering the wrath of a god. And sure, some does have some nice things, but as it is right now, it's not really something that you should ever consider. It's like actually a challenge god. Not much else to say about some. It's just like random effects. One day you are gonna get offered a scroll of acquirement or like a plus 14 crystal plate from some. Next day you're gonna get banished turn two. You're gonna press O into getting banished by some if you start as a chaos knight. Um, just the nature of the god. And last but not least, and this probably shouldn't be here. It's probably not the worst god in the game. Yeah, the worst god in the game has to be either Chei Sin or G or well, I guess this is like not particularly ordered in any specific way. All of them are extremely bad. You should probably not consider going any of these. Unless it is to try them and form your own opinion, of course. But we have Qazlal, right? Qazlal will be a god that will produce a lot of noise, requires heavy invocations investment, and the abilities cost way too much piety. They still cost way too much piety, even after getting buffed. So they cost less piety. They still cost way too much or deal very little damage. And so, like, they're not really something that I want to use. You cannot really rely on Qazlal in the same way that you can rely on other gods that are invocations heavy, like this guy or Uskoyo or hmm. Yeah, I guess Nemelex and Uskoyo are the most prevalent examples of like high quality invocations heavy gods. Qazlal is like the example of a god that like tries to be an invocations god and fails pretty miserably. Um, the noise that you produce with Qazlal was also nerfed rather recently when it was made so that thunderclouds didn't make incredible amounts of noise. So at least now you have a chance to not fight the entirety of the level in one go. Um, but it very often will happen to be the case that you will just aggravate 3 or 4 bands of monsters upon entering a level, any level, and don't even think about going into a level like Bolts 5 with exorbitant amounts of monsters in it. Like, you will never be done fighting, and Qazlal doesn't offer you any kind of sustain whatsoever to afford you to like let you continue fighting for that long. Um, you can certainly disaster area, which in my opinion is a bad ability, by the way, very unreliable and very expensive too, both in experience cost and in piety cost. Let's say that you get the best disaster area in the world and you kill everything that you were seeing. What are you going to do? Now that you have used disaster area and you have the next wave of monsters that were waiting just outside your line of sight to come after you. Yes, Kazlal does offer you power, but I still think the downside from going Kazlal is massive. And the power that it offers doesn't compensate for the massive downside that is the large amount of noise. And it's very funny because I don't particularly care about stealth, but that goes a step beyond. And instead, it like makes you the opposite of stealthy and makes you extremely noisy, and you will aggravate everything around you. So that's why I wouldn't recommend Qazlal. And that's like my reasoning for every god in the game, including Ignis. Um, um, so yeah, not much else to say. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you found it useful for some reason. If you enjoyed what you saw, you should consider following. And if you're already following, you should consider go follow on Twitch because Twitch is like the majority of my content. YouTube is just like an archive for my content. I don't really do YouTube only content. It's only on special occasions. And if you're following on YouTube and you're following on Twitch, you should consider subscribing on YouTube. It really helps me a lot. Like It helps me continue doing crawl content and like providing detailed thought processes over every sketchy situation that I get into when I play Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup. And believe me, I get into those a lot. I just try my best to win the game, and that happens to make for good, high quality content when playing the game. I also answer all questions and will help you with your character if you feel the need to ask for help. I will always be available for you to come and ask me about your character, and I am very glad to help you. With that being said, I think that's gonna be it for this video, and I hope that I see you in my streams on Twitch. Yes, have a nice one.